To recap on the toolbar, these are selection tools. These are maker tools. These make objects. These are modification tools. And these are color tools. So we looked at one color tool earlier today. Which color tool did we look at earlier today? The eyedropper. Now, you'll notice that next to the eyedropper, you have this little icon that looks like a gradient. So what I want to go over right now is how gradients work in the software. I'm not going to show you how to make custom gradients quite yet, but I want you to see how gradients might work, okay? So you'll notice that there's a gradient tool, and over here to the right, you'll notice, do you see another icon that looks like a gradient? So another one out here. This is called the gradient panel. So if I open this up, you're going to see the gradient panel. Okay, now what I like to do with the gradient panel is I like to make it taller. So see how I made the gradient bigger? You can see it better that way. So I like to expand the gradient panel so I can see a bigger block of the gradient. Okay, so if I go to my swatches, let me open up my swatch panel as well. Do you see the gradients that look, the swatches that look like gradients? Do you see the swatches that look like gradients? So you'll notice that there's 4 of them. There's 4 swatches here that looks like gradients. So I have, and if you hover over them, they sort of tell you what they are. There's white and black, orange, yellow, fading sky, and super soft black vignette. What do you think this checkerboard pattern indicates? It means it's transparent. So it's changing the opacity of the object. Oh, check it out. What is this guy right there? It is a target, but there's a special term for it. Registration. So check it out. When I hover over it, you guys know what that means now, right? It's 100, 100, 100, 100, right? So no color, registration. Look, there's black. So this is 0, 0, 0, 100. And then the others have different descriptors. You'll notice that when I hover over them, it's giving me CMYK breakdowns. So these are gradients. Okay, now I want to show you one other thing. If I go to my swatch panel and I go to this little library icon, see this little library icon, and I click on that, open that up, you'll notice that there's a gradient submenu. You see the gradient submenu? So when I go over here, you're going to see that there are gradients for metals. All right, so I'm going to go there where it says metals. All right, and then look at the metal area. If I hover over these, it tells me what they're called. Silver, steel, steel radial, pewter, aluminum. Any of these look like the band of metal on the pencil? Any of these? Which one do you guys want me to try? How about this one? Silver or steel? What do you guys think? Let's go with silver. Okay, so look, I clicked on the silver and it added it to my swatches. So whenever you click on a library item, it'll add it to the primary panel. Yes, Thomas? So I went to this little icon that looks like a set of books, and that's the library for swatches. There's one called gradients, and then there's a submenu called metals. Okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to apply that gradient to this metal band. So I have that layer locked, so I'm going to unlock it. I'm going to go to my black arrow, and I'm going to click on this metal band, and I'm going to assign the gradient to it. But I want you to know that I don't have it set up correctly. Do you guys see the error? You guys see the error? If I change a color right now, what's it going to change the color of? What's in the foreground? The stroke. So if I select a color it's going to add it to the stroke. If I select a gradient, it's going to add it to the stroke. I don't want that. I want to affect the fill. Okay, so remember, your fill always has to be in the foreground if that's what you're trying to modify. All right, so now that I selected the fill, I'm going to click on silver. So there's the silver applied to the metal band. But is this the correct position for the gradient? Is this the correct position? So check this out. I'm going to move this object so we can compare and contrast the original versus the one I'm illustrating. So is this the correct direction of a gradient? Okay, so you'll notice I use the term direction multiple times. That's how you describe a gradient. It's a direction, and it's usually top to bottom, left to right, or on a diagonal. Okay, so in this case, my gradient is moving from left to right, when in fact, it should be moving from top to bottom. So I need to change the direction of it. So how do I do that? Well, there's a couple of different ways that I can do this, but the easiest way is to select the object that has the gradient, and then I'm going to go out here and select this tool. So this is called the gradient tool. And the gradient tool allows me to change the direction of the object. You'll notice that when I activated the tool, see how I activated it? See how it shows a line? So the line is going from left to right. I want to change the direction and move it from top to bottom. So I'm going to click here, hold my mouse, I'm holding my mouse, I'm holding my mouse, and I'm dragging. And when I let go, it changes the position of the gradient. So if I click here on a corner and drag along the opposite corner, I change the direction of the gradient to be on a diagonal. If I click here on the left, pull to the right, it's going from left to right. Bottom to top, top to bottom. Does that make sense? So I'm changing the direction of the gradient. This bar that you see right here, this is called the Gradient Annotator. The Gradient Annotator. And that is a visual aid. So that means that if you want to turn it on or off, it's under the View menu. And let's see, where are you, Gradient Annotator? There you are. There it is, right there. Okay, so, but I usually like the Gradient Annotator. I don't turn it off, I leave it on. All right, so let me reposition the gradient. So I know it's not perfect. We will learn how to make custom gradients, but what's important right now is that you know that they exist, you saw me apply it, and you saw that the gradient tool out here changes the direction of it. Changes the direction of it. So now that I changed the direction of the gradient, I'm going to move the metal part back to where it was before. All right. And look, I don't know if I told you this, but you can use your arrow keys to also nudge your content. Left, right, up, down. Right, so I'm using my arrow keys a little bit there. All right. So if I look at my gradient area, do you see a default gradient that maybe I could try on my pencil? So I'm going to try this guy. Okay. I know it's not exactly the color of the pencil, but I just want to experiment with it and see if it will change the volume of the pencil. So you'll notice that it creates a volumetric quality. Okay, so when you're drawing the pencil, I'd like to challenge you to try to put a gradient on it. If you don't want to, it's okay, but just try. And I'm not asking you to make a gradient, but maybe you can check out the library of gradients that are here, and maybe you can find one that will work good for you, okay? So let's go to color combinations. I don't know about those. Those look pretty crazy, right? So you'll notice that if you go forward and back, you'll see other gradients in here, right? So I'm just challenging you. Try it. See what you think, okay? We're going to learn gradients in a more thorough conversation later, okay? Any questions or concerns? Yes? Do not delete the reference image. Now, when you upload it, it may not see it in Canvas. That's okay, don't worry about it. We're gonna learn how to manage linked images later. For now, I just care that it's there for you as a tool to help you draw. If I don't see it in the homework at this point, I'm not worried about it. When it becomes important, I will let you know, and we will discuss it. Okay, great question. Any other questions? All right, I have. Yes.
How do we see that box, the big box?
This one right here?
The orange gradient box?
This one?
Yeah.
Okay, let me reset my workspace, okay? So the question is, how did I see that giant gradient box? Okay, so there's a gradient panel. There's the little icon for the gradient panel. So I tore this away. So we've been tearing panels away. And then I grabbed the bottom and just stretched it down. And then you can also make it wider. So I like to look at it like that. I like this big gradient. If you don't like working with it that way, not a big deal. Any other questions?